Hey everyone.
I'm Jane.
I'm kidding.
As you know, my name is Pat. It's that time again. It's time for another episode of the Kinky Christian Podcast.
It's on you, honey boo boo.
Why is it me?
You always start out.
It doesn't mean you can't.
I can't.
You can't?
No. It's your job.
So you can't say, hey everyone, welcome to an episode of the Kinky Christian Podcast. You can't say that.
No, because that's
Okay.
your job.
Well, I just said it.
Yeah.
So
Good job.
thank you. I got one job, right?
That's right.
And that's just to welcome you guys to the podcast. So I'm done. I'll let you take over, and you can
You're funny.
you can finish it off, right? All right. So we are back with the biblical sexy party type stuff, that all the questions you wanted to know about biblical sex but were too afraid to ask. So we finished off Genesis last time, so now we're in Exodus. And oddly enough, there really isn't much about sex or relationships in Exodus. When I was going through it, at least what I picked out.
You picked out a doozy here.
Well, I didn't pick out the doozy. The doozy was there. I just plucked that feather from that chicken, and we're gonna look at it now. You know.
Okay.
So we're gonna start with why you
I'm
give me a
just
smirk.
looking
Okay.
at you.
It's because I'm so damn handsome, right?
Yes, exactly.
So we're going to do Exodus, and we're going to start in Exodus 6, verse 20. And, normally we kind of give you the before and after so you get context in this, but I don't really think there was much context, because they were just
Nope.
giving like a lineage, which is, I don't know, kind of odd to begin with, I thought, for Exodus. Usually the lineages is like in, Chronicles and Kings and,
Right.
all that stuff. But they give a lineage here. And so in Exodus 6, verse 20, it's talking about Amram, or Amram, or Amram, or...
We're never going to...
We're going to call him Amram.
Amram.
And it says Amram took Jochebed, if you're French, his father's sister, to wife, and she bare him Aaron and Moses. And the years of the life of Amram were 137, which doesn't mean anything. However, let's go rewind to the beginning of that verse where it talks about him taking his aunt as his wife.
Yeah.
So what?
Why?
I don't know, but it's not wrong back then. And in fact, that's where Moses came from. And God took Moses, and we all kind of know what happened with Moses and the importance he played. So, I mean, it's not like Amram took his aunt and then was cursed.
Right.
Amram,
he was blessed.
For banging his aunt.
That is so bizarre.
Well,
I mean, I understand, like, when the husbands would die, then the wives would have to, not have to, but, or maybe they did have to. But anyway, they would marry a brother, or they would marry another male figure.
Normally the brother, if there was one.
Right.
Yeah.
But it doesn't, nowhere before does it talk about there being a need for him to marry the aunt. That was just like
That was just a...
He just married the aunt and they had children.
Well, and, initially I was thinking about this because when you think about your aunt, nowadays, your aunt is usually quite a bit older than you.
Not in our family, but...
Well, not in our family had, huge farm. When you have a huge farm family where you got 12 kids, I'm like a year older than like 2 or 3 of my nieces.
Right.
But typically, your aunt is closer to your parents' age,
Right.
give or take a few years, right? So when I first read this, I'm like, there's, he
How can
must,
she even have children? I mean,
Yeah.
or he was very young.
well, exactly. You start running through all these scenarios, but then I started thinking, I'm like, no, everyone had large families back then, and there was no, because there's no birth control.
No.
You just, had sex and suffered the consequences. So, I mean, his aunt could have actually theoretically been younger than him.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
I mean, given how things were back then, it doesn't talk about the age they were when they got married, but theoretically, the age is probably really didn't have much to do with anything back then. That's why they don't really talk about, the age gaps, because they
Didn't
really matter. So,
No. Oh.
but yeah, that's kind of interesting. I'm not going to say much about it other than, it wasn't a sin. And you got to remember that all this still before the law was given. The law has not been given yet.
But it's coming now.
The law is going to be coming here real quick.
Right now.
Right now, no, the law is in Leviticus. That's the giving of the law, right? Or no?
This sure looks like the law to me.
What's that?
Shall not murder. Shall not commit
where are you
adultery.
at?
I am in Exodus 20. The 10 Commandments.
Oh.
Which is our next one. 2020. You shall not commit adultery.
Oh, this is the 10 Commandments, yes. See, I was getting ahead of myself. When I speak of the law being given, so we get the 10 Commandments here. In Leviticus, it breaks down the law.
Oh.
It touches on all your commandments, but it goes deep into all of this and more.
Okay.
This is like your rules to live by, but Leviticus really breaks down everything. That's where you get into not just what you shall and shall not do, but also the consequences for doing that.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So, you want to
Yes, sir.
check that one off of there? So,
Okay.
yeah, Moses, our whole, everything lineage came through Moses, and Jesus and all that from incest. Let that sink in.
Yeah, no kidding.
All right, so now we jump to Exodus 20,
20.
verse 14. And so this is part of the 10 Commandments. Honor your mother and your father, and no lying, no murdering, and all that. We're not going to touch on any of that because everyone knows what the 10 Commandments are, but there is one that does kind of touch on what we're discussing, and that is, you shall not commit adultery. Now, what is adultery?
Stepping out of the marriage.
Stepping out of the marriage. So, and it can go either way. So even if I'm not married and you are, I'm still committing adultery because I'm having sex with a married woman.
Correct.
So it's if you're married and you're having sex with someone other than who you're married with, that's adultery. And if you're not married and you're having sex with someone who is married, that's adultery.
Unless they have been brought into the marriage, like a third. Or fourth and fifth.
Well, back then they had tons of them because you had tons of wives. Mm-hmm. You had tons of concubines and.
Yeah. So how does that fall in?
Well,
shall not commit adultery, and you've got concubines.
They're brought into the marriage.
So you're saying that
they're not stepping out of the marriage.
Every wife was okay with all the concubines?
My guess is every wife wasn't even okay with every other wife. You put more than one woman in a room together, and bad things can happen.
They can.
The more women that get together, your odds increase that bad things are going to happen.
Yeah.
Especially women who are competing for the affections of somebody.
That's where it gets bad.
Or the head of the household. You bring in a wife and say the mother-in-law
Yeah.
or the mother. It gets very choppy there sometimes,
It sure does.
So that's why when you read all this, and I read like King David had, 300 wives and, so many hundred concubines, I'm like, what the heck? Well, hello, Morph.
Hi, Morpheus. Come here, kitty kitty.
So I'm like, I can barely handle one. How is 300 and plus beneficial to anyone,
They had its purpose.
Well, back then, yeah, but I can't picture that. Imagine 300
No.
wives and even more concubines.
No. I couldn't handle it.
This is what I'm saying. So anyway, no adultery.
No adultery.
So now we jump down to verse 17.
You want me to read this one?
Yeah, because my eyes are...
Okay. You shall not covet. Covet. That's what I said.
You said covered.
I said covet. Excuse me. You shall not covet your neighbor's house. You shall not covet your neighbor's wife, or his male or female servant, his ox or donkey, or anything that belongs to your neighbor.
So I put that in there just because, it's talking, the verse itself is talking about coveting.
Yeah.
Which is fine, but when it says you shouldn't covet your neighbor's wife or servants or anything, you should not want their stuff, and I could be wrong, but covet is more than just going, ooh, he's got a nice car. Covet is a little more intense. I really want that car.
Yeah.
I really want his wife. Yeah, Morph really does want attention. He's looking straight in that camera going, covet me. You want me. I am the coolest cat on the face of this planet. Ah, the joys of home studios, right?
Right.
So, yeah, you should not be, like, going after your neighbor's wife.
That would be adultery.
Yes. So, that does, now, on the flip side of that does not mean that you can't look at and go, ooh, that is a nice car.
Or, wow,
Or,
she's beautiful.
That's a beautiful woman.
Right.
Or,
wow, he's very handsome.
Right. You can admire and you can compliment and you can, but you don't want to, like get so caught up in
planning.
And get jealous, because that causes jealousy and, it causes so many other things when you like, ooh, I want that. Can you say, ooh, I like that car. I want to get me one like it. Sure. Ooh, that's a beautiful woman. One day I hope to have a woman like that. Sure. Mm-hmm. But not go, ooh, I'm going to get that,
Yeah, that's not good.
That's a no bueno.
That's a no bueno.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's jump down to Exodus 21. And this is going to be verses 7 through 11. Mm-hmm. Which this is also part of it's this whole thing is talking about how they deal with servants.
Okay.
So I just want you to be aware that's where the context.
Hebrew servants.
Yeah, the Hebrew servants, not the what do they call if you're not a Hebrew? I don't know.
I just drew a blank.
So did I. Gentiles. Yeah, Jews and Gentiles. Thank you, producer Aaron. So this is how to deal with Hebrew servants. And that's where this comes in.
If a man sells his daughter as a servant, she is not to go free as male servants do. Is she?
He could not get grip on that floor, could he?
I tried so hard not to laugh. Let's start this over. If a man sells his daughter as a servant, she is not to go free as male servants do. If she does not please the master who has selected her for himself, he must let her be redeemed. He has no right to sell her to foreigners because he has broken faith with her. If he selects her for his son, he must grant her the rights of a daughter. If he marries another woman, he must not deprive the first one of her food, clothing, and marital rights. If he does not provide her with these three things, she is to go free without any payment of money.
Did you get all that?
That was very confusing.
Yeah. So when
I
when
want to
you
break
get,
it down.
Well, when you get break it on down. There's always differences, right, wrong, or otherwise. I'm not gonna argue the semantics of it all, but males are always treated differently than females.
Correct. That still happens today.
Correct. Well, and to a point, rightfully so. We are different creatures.
Correct.
We are to be treated,
Differently.
according to our person. You know what I mean?
Correct.
So back in the day, if you had a male servant and you didn't like the male servant, or if the male servant, you could sell him and get rid of him and just say, I'm done. If you had a female servant, however, they were treated differently. They become more of, it's almost a respect thing.
Okay.
They are like more treated with more respect than a male. Like I said, a male servant, hey, I'm done with you. I'm selling you. You're out. You can't do that with a female servant. If you get if I sell you my daughter, and you decide no, she's no good, you could give her to your son, but then you got to treat her as a daughter. Or, here's where it gets confusing to me, because it says if he marries another woman, he must not deprive the first. So I don't know if that's breaking it off. I mean, this whole thing is supposed to be talking about servants, but then it goes right to if he marries.
Yeah, because you're not marrying your servant.
You shouldn't be. Maybe they did.
Maybe they did.
And maybe that's why it gets confusing, is maybe there was actually more in here that got lost through the centuries of translations and everything, which is very possible. But the bottom line is the female servants are to be treated better than the male servants.
Okay.
At the end, if the male who buys the servant does not provide the food and the clothing and the marital rights and everything for this female servant, I'm sorry, this cat is just cracking me up. He's chasing this piece of paper all around the floor next to me. So, then she is to go free, and she doesn't have to pay him any money to go free.
So would she go back to her dad then?
She could go anywhere she wanted. Because she's now free.
Because usually women aren't alone out there because it's
Correct.
too dangerous.
Right.
So I would imagine she would probably
go
back
back to family. That's usually what they did. But she's free now. She's not a servant anymore. And you don't have to buy her out of slavery like you do the men.
Okay.
So from what I read and researched on this is one of them few times where a woman actually comes out on top.
Yeah.
For being a woman.
If she's not wanted.
And instead of a man, who just gets sold to someone else. And so anyway, that was my take on it,
That makes sense.
And you have to provide her food, clothing, and marital rights. You have to, if you marry another woman. So, and it's not saying if you marry another woman and divorce her. It just, if you marry another woman, you still, doesn't matter how many women you married back then, you had to provide the same thing to all of them.
Yeah.
Not
a bad thing.
No, I think you should. I think if you're going to have multiple wives, you need to treat them all. There's always going to be the alpha wife,
Yeah.
In my opinion, there's always the alpha female. It's the way female are wired. So is it always the first one? No, not always. But there will always be an alpha.
Yeah.
So, but you should also treat them all with dignity and respect and that kind of,
And honor them.
Yeah, exactly. So,
Right.
that's my take on that. If I'm wrong,
Let us know.
I'm sure someone will let me know. But that's what I looked up, and that's what it does. The only confusing part was it goes right from a servant, selling your daughter as a servant, to getting married. But the Bible does that a lot, and I think a lot of that is just because it's been translated. And you got to remember, all these texts, there is no such thing as the original Bible.
Not anymore.
Never has been. There's never been a Bible, and there's never been original writings. Nothing is original. Everything, the only thing that was original was the stone that God carved the law on, that is in the Ark of the Covenant, which we do not have. That's the only original God-written thing. Everything else was written by somebody at some point, and back then, the only way you could read anything was if I came to your house or I met you on a journey and we got to talking, and I had something that you didn't have and you had something that I didn't have, you would copy my copy and I would copy your copy. So now I got this, and it just was passed on. There was no book. There was nothing. So all the writings for the Bible that we have are like 3rd and 4th century. I think if I remember when I read, and this was years ago, so I could be off on this, but the oldest ones we have are like 4th century. So it's 400 years after Jesus. And they're in Greek and Hebrew and Aramaic. And I think, if I remember right, somewhere even in Latin. So there is no original texts for this. We are just going by the texts that we have found and have translated. And so these texts have been, before we even found them, they had been written and copied and, translated and for centuries. Mm-hmm. So that's why I look at it as, if God didn't want us to know any of this, it wouldn't be around. He's had plenty of opportunity to eliminate it. And what we have is what we have. There are books that aren't in the Bible that I truly believe are still God's word, just because man took them out, maybe we weren't ready for them, and God, now they're back. Anyway, there are no original texts. So.
Okay.
So I think that's what happens, is some things just get lost because time and...
It's very possible.
Anyway. So now we're going to go to Exodus 22, and we're going to jump down to verse 16 and 17. And this whole thing, we pulled this out because it's talking about at the time what the social responsibilities were. So... I think I can read this one.
I can read it if you'd like.
Let me give this one a shot. Sorry, my eyes are getting worse, and I forgot to grab my glasses. It's one of the things, you get old. And so, if a man seduces a virgin who is not pledged to be married, and sleeps with her, he must pay the bride price, and she shall be his wife. If her father absolutely refuses to give her to him, he must still pay the bride price for virgins. So I plucked this fancy little feather out, because it's talking about premarital sex. Something that, as Christians, you're raised your whole life to say premarital sex and sex outside of marriage. Even if it's, you get married and get a divorce. So premarital sex and sex outside of marriage is a sin, and it's wrong, right? That's how the church raises us. That's what they teach. I went through the Bible, like I said, multiple times. I could never find anything that says that. However, I found this, where it talks about virginity, not Virginians.
Not Virginians.
Virgins do not come from Virginia.
No.
As some people may believe. However, it talks about virginity. And it says, if a man seduces a virgin, it doesn't just say a woman, it says a virgin who is not pledged to be married and sleeps with her, he must pay the bride price and she shall be his wife. So my first question was, what if she is pledged to be married to someone and he seduces her and sleeps with her?
Then he's probably going to get stoned.
Who knows? It doesn't say anything about that. But it just says if you sleep with a virgin. It doesn't say it's wrong. It doesn't say that you can't do it. It just says if you do it, you have to marry her. Right? Mm-hmm. So that's the closest thing I could come to finding so far as I'm doing this deep dive, where it talks, that you shouldn't have sex before marriage. It doesn't say you can't. It just says if you do, that you should marry that person.
Right.
Now, on the flip side of that, the father can say, you know what, you're a loser, and I want my daughter to have someone better than you. So, no, she's not marrying you. The man still has to pay the dowry or whatever it is. They call it the bride price.
Bride price.
For virgins, and I don't know what virgins were going for back then. I would imagine the stock price on virgins has gone up since there's so few of them nowadays, but you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Supply and demand. It's okay. Hopefully someone got them.
Yep.
So if the dad does not want to have that guy marry his daughter, he just stops it.
What if she wants him, though? Apparently she doesn't have a say.
And that's the odd thing, because, back then that could very possibly happen.
Yeah.
And
women didn't have.
Yeah, and it's not like they could elope to Vegas or anything
right,
and get,
right.
There was no, I'm sure they did a lot of running away, but boy, that was just frowned upon in that establishment.
Yeah, I would imagine that would be one heck of a life to live on the run.
Well, because you lose everything. Both of you would.
Yep.
Your family would disown you. You would have no inheritance, and that's how a lot of people survive, because you would inherit land and cattle and businesses and whatever they had, you would inherit that. So
right.
So yeah, that one was kind of weird,
Ugh.
Yeah, but you still had to pay the price.
You always have to pay the price.
There's always a price to pay for sex. Always.
You be nice.
I'm just saying, sex does not come cheap. So, we are one verse away from finishing off Exodus altogether. That's how little there was in the book of Exodus that dealt with sex or marital relationships, or relationships really, was that much. So, the last one we're going to talk about is same thing, Exodus 22, but we're going to skip verse 18 because that just talks about do not allow a sorceress to live, which weird thing, you go from virgins to sorceress, then back to sexual relationships. Okay. But, so verse 19 says, anyone who has sexual relations with an animal is to be put to death. Period. End of story. There's no beating around the bush on that one.
No.
Done deal, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if we really need to expand on that one.
I don't think we do.
Leave that one right where it's at.
I think we can leave that one right there.
So that is the entire book of Exodus in one episode.
Look at us.
Look at us go.
Oops.
We're just running right through this. Leviticus is going to be a whole different scenario. So I'm going to warn everyone.
Is it going to be really dry?
No, it's not dry, but Leviticus is where the controversies of today come in.
Oh, lovely. So we're going to make people angry.
There's going to be, a lot of y'all are probably going to be pissed off, and hey, If
Probably
you,
me included.
you'll probably not like a few of these.
And
You
I'll
know.
let you know because, I don't have a problem speaking my mind.
However, this is God's law. You know, this is what He has set forth for us to live by, to live the best life possible. And you also have to remember that the reason these laws came into place is because we were not doing a very good job ourselves. And,
Yeah.
and things were just kind of going awry.
Yeah, we were making a muck.
Yeah. And here we are making a muck of the world again.
I don't think we ever stopped.
No,
Even when he did put the law down,
yeah,
nothing changed.
it tends to not. People will always be people. So just
why bother?
because he tries, as a parent, you try
I
to
know.
make your life the best you can for your kids and grandkids, and everyone's got their own opinion and own things, and that's fine. Like I say, there's going to be some pissed off people, and it is what it is.
Well-
Whether we agree or disagree has nothing to do with the fact that this is what God tells us to do, and if we're going to be kinky Christians, you can't have one without the other. If we're going to be kinky, that's fine. If we're going to be Christians, that's fine. But if we want to be both, we have to make sure we adhere to what God says. Otherwise, you're
Right.
just kinky.
Yes.
And that's fine too. If you want to be, we're not trying to convince anyone to be a Christian.
Nope.
So, just a forewarning, the next few episodes on the biblical end could be a little controversial to some. So, listen at your own risk. So, until next time, people, take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and God bless.